Forward to it, Max.
Okay, hello, Wesley.
Hi.
Hey. So, you've got quite an interesting past, and you've done that switch, which I always find interesting. Doing something completely different from where you left off, and maybe that's an interesting start to understand a bit better, like where you come from and what you did, because you've been messing with the police a bit, with law, like the army, right? Like, I don't know, wherever you want to start, whatever you feel like is important there, we can bring into this right now.
Yeah. So firstly, Max, thank you for inviting me on your podcast.
Yeah, pleasure.
It's great to meet you face to face, as it were, albeit through electronic medium. But so in answer to that, little background to who I am and what I've done and where I've been, and a very interesting past, a very interesting professional past as well. So I built up a property business from scratch, and within a 5-year period of starting that business, I'd achieved a 1,500-fold return on my investment, which even with regards to the amazing gains on crypto today, that's still a pretty good return on one's investment in a 5-year period. So I did reasonably well for myself. And at the same time, I worked as a police officer back then, and I worked in the police for 13 years and was reasonably well respected, and attained some various good awards and achievements. Some of the most notable ones were meeting the former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, at 10 Downing Street for a Bravery Award, and then also being presented with a Bravery Award by the then Prince Charles at his Highgrove residence in Gloucestershire for another Bravery Award. So was reasonably good at my job, and I built the property portfolio whilst being a police officer, enjoyed both roles, and I guess you'd say my next season of my life journey began when I started to smell what I call a bit of a rat in the money game system. Well, I call the economics of a particular nation or the world a money game. And there's reasons why I call it a money game. But I started to smell a bit of a rat, and that's when things started to get very interesting. You might want to ask some questions about that as we go forwards.
Yeah, sure. But let's go back. So, how did you manage to build that portfolio? Because I assume you started investing. You understood compound interest. You understood, okay, I can get a loan out on that property and then reinvest it and do all these tax benefits and like, were you already familiar with trust back then and like you used to run that portfolio and also, like, how do you secure it from the tax man, let's say, right? Because like, as soon as you pay tax on something, right, it's technically not yours.
Oh gosh, absolutely. No, you're right on that.
And it can always be taken away from you, but there is certain ways that you can work around that. But I don't know, like, you probably have that portfolio in the UK.
And, so back then I didn't have any mentors. I mean, we're talking 1999, so by most people's standards, that's a long time ago. That's 26, 27 years ago I started. I was a youngster, I didn't have any mentors, and I had to learn from scratch the hard way. And, I learned how to leverage finance. Leverage basically means utilize a little bit of money, you leverage it, so you borrow money. And I also came up with my own strategies on how to utilize credit facilities to purchase properties. So I didn't start with much money, but I seem to have a bit of a knack whereas creative finance is concerned. And it tends to come naturally to me. And so I was able to devise some pretty unique strategies. There were nobody teaching that kind of strategy back then. And, we're talking 2001, 2002, 2003. And I wasn't aware of other people who were engaged in creative finance. I'm sure there were, because there's a lot of people that now teach what they were doing back then. And so, yes, I built my property portfolio through leverage and through creating value in the property. So you would buy the property, you would renovate the property, you then get an increased value on the property, and then you draw out the money that you put in the property, and then you put that into another property. So there's that ways. You would also then use credit facilities to be able to put into the property and buy the property. So the whole nothing down scenario was technically actually possible back then. It's a lot more complicated today with regards to the so-called money laundering regulations, which is really just a impedance on business and legitimate business, really.
Yeah.
We can go into that at a later stage, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the creativity of business, the creativity of legal finance. You don't really want to fall foul of the system, and that's something I teach in the Money Fitness Expert. Know the rules of the game you're playing. Well, first of all, know the game you're playing, know the rules, play by the rules, and play well, and then you can win. If you don't know the game you're playing, you don't know what the rules are, and you'll get played. So that's a little bit about the property business. And I liked the no money down, because technically, if you can actually take out more than you put in the property, you've got none of your own money in it. Technically, it's an infinite return on your investment.
Yeah.
So that's how I was able to build really quickly quite a large portfolio by average standards. I wasn't mega wealthy, but at the age of about 31, 32, I could have literally just downed tools and had enough passive income that I didn't technically need to work. But that's when my other story and my other season began.
Yeah, it sounds super interesting. Like, to me, I kind of stumbled into property, business, let's say, and commercial property in that sense, but it was never interesting to me because, like, I have one side of my family is from Croatia, and we had the war here, not too long ago.
Right.
And the other side of the family is, German, and so also war history there. So I learned about that whole topic very early on, right? And so, I went into all these rabbit holes like super early on, like 14, 15, 16, started reading these books. I'm like, okay, everything is different than what we're taught in school. This is actually way more fucked up, right? than we think it is, and then like my reaction was at the time, okay, let's just enjoy this life. There's no point in, doing anything of substance, because I don't want any kids anyways, because it's like so negative, right? And went down like a completely different trajectory.
Right.
Sure, I was always doing like something crazy, but like property business was always too boring for me. I always went for the full risk and start like something from scratch, an e-commerce business, like anything that would entail like something super risky, because the other part was too boring to me. But like now I have kids.
So you're like a bit of an adrenaline fix then.
Well, yeah, but back then it was definitely my choice, right? But now with kids, everything changes, right? Like, like since many years now, 4 or 5 years, by my whole, let's say, way of life change, let's say. And it is, then you start thinking about these topics, and like, okay, why did I sell this to, invest it into something super risky, and it could have done it differently, but like that's all, like bullshit.
It's experience though, isn't it?
Right, exactly. But yeah, so then your second phase started. What do you think, like that time in the police, or in the were you in the army too?
No, just the police.
Just the police. Okay. So how did that like shape your thought processes with this whole realm of business? Because I assume you were already in touch with law back then, right? Because like legalese, like the police kind of uses different terms, right?
They do,
but you don't really know about that. Exactly.
No,
you don't really know. You're just supposed to, like, you have a code that you have to follow, and then right. But like that's super interesting too, because like the more you go into that, then you also see, okay, maybe there's private companies involved, right? Like it's not so much like a government institution after all, right? But
so when did this a company?
Exactly,
it's a legal entity, and people don't understand that. A president of a country or a government is a president of a legal entity.
Yeah.
So, anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
No, but that's exactly where I wanted to go. Like, when did you understand, that this whole thing that you have in front of you is actually completely different, right?
It was a bit of a journey, to be honest. It took me a few years to start to really delve down into what was going on. I must admit, I was a bit curious when I was serving as a police officer, and I use the word, I worked as a police officer. I served as a police officer. I never say I am a police officer or was a police officer, because then it becomes an identity thing, and my identity is bigger and greater and far more higher consciousness than just a role. Okay, even though the role might be important, me, who I am, supersedes the role, and the role should come from who I am, who I truly am. So, yeah, it was curious when I was working as a police officer, because I noted that there was ways that we had to represent either the injured party's name or the offender's name or the alleged offender's name, all capitalized surname and prefix with a title. We just weren't told that it was a legal title. And when you have a legal title, it points to an owner. Well, the owner is not the named on that entity. So I didn't know that at the time. And curious words like when you're interviewing someone, you caution them, and then we're taught to say, "Do you understand?" And the simple fact of that is, well, you flip it round. Do you consent to stand under the authority that I represent? I didn't know I was, literally forcing people into that decision-making process, because as soon as you consent to stand under the authority, then the human is treated the same as being as the legal entity that they play. So, I mean, I do teach a little bit of this on the Money Fits community, and it's important to know this stuff and that's why I say it's a game. The game of Monopoly. I'm sure you're familiar with the game of Monopoly.
Yeah, of course.
So the game of Monopoly, it has rules, okay? It has a box. So the box is the jurisdiction. The rules are the laws of the game, okay? So think of the box as the country of England or the country of Germany or the country of the United States of America. And then you've got your little tokens. You've got your little dog, your hat, your little iron, and your token is what you play the game with. So the token that you play the game of the UK PLC, or the environment, the economy of the money game of England, would be, your legal name. And that's the token. And when you understand that's the token, it's not you. And there's a whole process that creates joinder. There's reverse joinder and joinder. And I saw all this firsthand going through the different stages of enforcement and court and legal processes. And another curious phrase, you'll hear on the news, "Oh, Mr. Bloggs appeared in court." Or just think about that word, appeared. So if you appear as something, then you are not that something. You look like that something. And really, what should be said is, Mr. Bloggs physically attended court. Well, we're not dealing with physical human entities when we're in that system. It's legal entities that are legal straws. I'm sure you understand a lot. Yeah. So I started to realize that through a long process of actually engaging lots and lots of legal cases in the UK. Years. I probably anywhere between 12 and 14 years as a litigant in person, with probably anywhere between, I can't remember, that's a long time ago, but 35 and 50 separate cases, attending court maybe over 105 times in a 5-year period. So, reasonably, quite a reasonably robust and difficult, process.
Yeah, especially when you realize what you have against you, right? Like, it's something that you can technically not touch. Nobody's really, let's say, like, touchable in a sense, right? Like, it's completely fictitious, right? Just how the straw man is. It's I can assume, right? Like, you go to law school and you learn all of that stuff, but like, you don't really learn that topic, that real important topic that works in the background, right? Like, you don't really learn about, crown land and common law, like how it's like opposed to each other, and how you treat it as a fictitious entity in that sense, and that you can actually go all the way back and change your legal documents, and then it's different, right? Like, for example, in Germany, you're not really German if you have a German passport. There's like a yellow kind of sheet that you can get when you can prove that you have, your ancestry is fully German over several generations from the dad side, and then you're actually, German. And everyone working in the higher positions in the German government, they need that in order to work there, but it's not really talked about. But I assume that it's not much different in the UK, and I mean, it's kind of become a topic through the States, I would say. The US is talking about this more openly than any other country in the world, I would say. And there's more people that are interested in these topics. But I guess, I don't know how your, friends group and people that you work with is, but like, in my realm, there's not really that many people that are interested in, especially when you go, deep on these topics. They just kind of, like, oh shit, this would really rattle my whole identity. I have to really go back and study something. And people don't seem to like that.
It's true. And I remember I had a what I call like a waking up process to the reality of true truth. And I use the word true before true because unfortunately in the system, a truth can be, perverted. It's propagated as the truth, but actually it's not the true truth. And the other interesting thing I found is that this type of approach, certainly from a classical, legally trained mind, is really looked down upon as being very silly, very narrow-minded, unintelligent. And I found it very interesting as I started to go through my training process of that 12 to 14 years that when I went through my waking up process, I started to realize that if I came across a new true truth, or I uncovered the lie of the system, how I responded to that internally was an interesting realization. Because if I responded to it in a very forced pushback, condescending way, then I soon began to realize, oh my goodness me, that's the level of conditioning that I have succumbed to from that system to believe that truth that lie is a truth. And then I started to be more open to, wow, if I literally fight back and protect my position by, there's a process, discredit, banish, silence. So if I discredit that potential truth, I discredit and then I banish it from my mind and then I silence it, well, that means I'm really, really completely believing the system's promulgated truth. And it was an interesting process because I went through a wake-up process and oh my goodness me, was it shocking.
Yeah.
And, anyway, that's another story. So over to you.
No, but you can go for it. Go for it. It's definitely, that's part of this channel, this type of stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, you touched on it a moment ago that it's shocking. Yeah. And, when you start to uncover the lies of the system and you start to reveal what the actual true truth is, it's a very shocking process. And I must admit, I had when let's just take money, for example, okay? Money. So Fiat. When you get a mortgage, fiat currency, a mortgage, bank loans you the money. I've covered this on my Money Fitness Expert social media. When you go to the bank, you get your loan, that your signature on the document forms a promissory note. The promissory note is accepted for value by the bank under the Bills of Exchange Act. And then your credit is created.
Already paid back at that moment. By the way,
there's a whole host of things behind the scenes that go on. Yeah. But in essence, what we don't realize is we are the true creditor. The human is the true creditor to that process. And in a legal process, more often than not, creditors win. It's rare that debtors win because debtors in the eyes of that system are blasphemers. And so a blasphemer must be punished. And I'm using religious language because actually the whole legal process is a religious type system. It's a punitive system. It's a punishment system. Wrong deserves punishment. Well, of course, that's really, it's nothing to do with love. It's the antithesis of love. And if we had a love-based system, what would that look like? So yeah, the wake up process it's quite a startling, astonishing, shocking process. And I had a 7-day period where I felt really, really unnerved. And just like you say, I had to go back. And actually, there's a strength of character that you have to really dig down and you have to understand and know and experience that you are a higher level of consciousness of a being than what we've been led to believe. Because if we are just the sum of what we are in the system, it's a sad process. That's what helped me get through that sort of 7-day wake up phase, because it was shocking. I had sleepless nights and of what was going on with the money. And I built my business thinking that a bank had to have something to lend me so I could borrow it. And that something was money, but they didn't. It was my signature. Oh my God. And that's just scratching the tip of the iceberg. When you get into law, you get into all these different entities. Oh my word. It is an intricate game. It's very clever, but it's not wise.
It's very clever. I mean, that's why, they had so much time to perfect it. And, people sometimes say, okay, there's so much stuff going wrong out there. And I'm like, no, this is all
it's designed, it's fit for purpose.
Exactly. Like,
Mm,
I mean, you also talk about that, that's, one of the reasons why I want to have you on, because I saw that you understand, how that stuff works in the background. And you also talk about it, and not a lot of people do that. But, all these wars that we have going on, there's a purpose for that. Nothing
mm,
happens by accident. There's literally nothing in geopolitics that happens by accident. Especially, if it gets the eyes of the news, right? Like, everything is just perfectly set up, and people still don't realize it, which is baffling to me. Before, in my early 20s, I would go out and I would try to change people's minds about these types of topics, right? Like, I would waste my energy on this. But that now, I understood, okay, I can only change myself. I can have these conversations, and whoever
mm,
wants
mm.
to learn about that, is welcome to learn about that. Because I think just listening to this type of stuff will do its trick if you're open to it, right? And then I guess after that you have to do it yourself, because you have to go down that route yourself. You have to read those books. You have to get that information yourself. Like, it's not possible to just copy someone else's knowledge in a sense, but you have to go through that. But I mean, 7 days is pretty good, I would say, on your end. That's for most people that would last much
Well,
longer.
I think that was the convergence point, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'd been building to that for a couple of years, and it was a 7-day period of a kind of hell, really, because it was you when everything that you thought was true just goes poof,
Mm.
you think, what on earth do I actually put my foot on? What do I trust in? Who do I trust in? How can I trust in it? And it's a difficult wake up process. And I do believe that it's right that we uncover the truth, and we share what's going on. But what I have found through my research is that if you have a higher level purpose and you want to, in effect, take that system on, then you have to be very wise. And that's why I set up Money Fitness Expert, because what I wanted to help people was, look, let's help you make money, manage money, invest money, and so that your little token that's going around inside the money game is completely safe, completely secure in that system. Because if you pay when it's due, if you don't fight the system, you actually don't get harmed if you plan ahead. Now, if you want to then do a greater work, a greater cause, then isolate that external from your legal entity in that system. And that's, so I know quite a few people in this arena, and I respect a lot of people in this arena, truth seekers. And how can you not respect a truth seeker that's actually trying to uncover what the true truth is for the benefit of the general population? That's an honorable pursuit. But I think that a really good way to do that and to engage that pursuit is to be wise. And wisdom is far higher in its consciousness level than cleverness, because you can't be clever and be source that from love, but you can be wise because that comes from love. So any cleverness really is fear-based, because it's about protecting me. A clever trick is about making sure that I don't get harmed. And unfortunately, there are ways that we need to play the game that we actually need an offensive position with our finances in the money game system, and we need a defensive position. And unfortunately, there are winners and losers in that system. Now, I didn't design that system. And I certainly tried very hard to change that system to the tune of many, many millions of pounds. That's what it cost me personally. It cost me my reputation. It cost me my physical health, which I now have back. And so if people want to really do something good, then on their own, it's a very difficult task. I wouldn't want to dissuade someone from actually doing a really good pursuit of benefiting the general population, but it needs to be done with wisdom and care and a lot of thought. And so make sure everything inside the system is playing well. I hope that makes a little bit of sense.
Oh, totally makes sense. Yeah, it's the same thing with me. I had to switch basically 2 years ago. I stopped drinking alcohol. I had a lot of like drug use and substance abuse, like in my 20s. And,
Right.
Now I'm basically also selling freedom to people, right? Like, I'm helping people get free from these, problems that they
Brilliant.
have, in a sense, right? And you're also selling freedom in that sense, which I,
Correct.
find super interesting. And it is true, we need more seekers and more curious people. And, I think Rumi said it, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself, right? Like it's
Oh, is that
exactly what you
right?
just,
That's really good. Okay.
it's a quote by Rumi, and it's exactly that. And I also made that mistake. I learned the hard way, and I was walking around with that tinfoil hat for other people, right? And it's totally fine. So I have no problem, like being that person. And if like somebody doesn't like me, that's cool. Like I went through that whole phase where it was a problem, but it's not anymore, and it's totally fine. But yeah, it's true. Like being wise is also a process, though, right? I think it's not easy. But so, what happened with you with your physical health? If you want to talk about that, well, like how was that whole thing?
Well, stress does funny things to the body. When you're under a lot of stress, then your physiology takes huge brunts of that stress. And it was a journey for me, and also that's a whole other area. I decided to go down, inverted commas, the alternative route of health. Once I'd had found out what was going on, and I decided to do that road. And yes, it was a long time, and that took me 6 years to regain my health fully. And I was pretty ill, and I did a lot of different protocols, lots of nutrition, dietary change, cleansing, and cleansing was one thing that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, it sometimes is frowned upon by the classical, profession, but it saved my life. Liver cleansings, absolutely amazing things. So I know this is a little bit off piste from money, but
no, let's go there.
Health is so key, and actually, I do teach that investing in your health is an investment. It's worth spending money on your health, and it's worth getting more knowledge about your health and becoming, more of a manager of your health than anybody else. So you can go and learn and take advice from other people, but then you become the one that decides, am I going to go down that road? Am I going to do this? So part of a higher level consciousness is becoming more informed, better educated, finding out what the truth is. And, our bodies are amazing. They're incredible. They're made really, really well. And the immune system is an incredible function. It's an incredible system. If we actually feed it and give it what it needs, nutritionally, all the building blocks, it can do fantastic things. It really can. And so I actually managed to help my body to heal itself. And it was a 6-year journey, like I said. And I didn't actually notice any real difference until about 4.5 years into that journey. And I did 2 years of green smoothies in the morning, green smoothies for lunch. And then, oh my goodness, and there was a liter, and then there was all the nutrition, and then there was the enemas. And then, and I know I didn't have any change for years. And most people would have given up after 3 months or 6 months.
Of course.
But what they don't realize is that for someone to get that ill, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of build up and build up and build up and build up. So to think you're just going to get a miraculous cure, unless, some divine presence heals you, which I've seen, it does happen, but it didn't happen to me. Unless that happens, it's going to take time. And there's a reversing of that process. Like, if someone's in crazy debt, they've got huge amounts of toxic debt, they're not going to get rid of that straight away. If they go bankrupt or there's insolvency, that's not actually getting rid of the problem. The problem still remains, and the problem is inside. It's the belief structure, because you'll only do what you believe. And so even with the health journey, there was things that I had to change. My belief system, and then my actions based on my belief changed. And I had some very amazing health practitioners that I worked with for that 6-year period, three different health practitioners, and amazing, absolutely amazing. And now I didn't take any medication. I don't take any medication. And there's people I know that were not quite as ill as I was when I began, the unfortunate decline, and they decided to go down the medical route, and they're in and out of hospital. They're on a ton of medication, and, and it breaks my heart to see that. And,
it's all a choice.
It's a choice. It is a choice.
It's all a choice. Are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to do the hard work? Just like you said, after some time, most people give up, but most people give up with anything. It's just the way it is. I mean, I'm certain that natural and holistic health is the only way. There are certain things in certain cases where you have to go treat the symptom, let's say, but it will always come back. If you don't go to the root cause of the problem, it will always come back. And it's just the way it is, right? Like,
Yeah.
In the end, what you're offering is you're selling freedom, but you're also selling time, right? Like it's the way it is. You did all the mistakes, I did all the mistakes.
Yeah.
And if people want to do their own mistakes, that's totally fine. Like you can go down that route, but it took me years as well, right, to figure it out. I worked with, I don't know, like almost 30 different, teachers, mentors, coaches in these last like 5-6 years. And
Wow.
I've had a couple that were with me like since the beginning, especially health wise, like did all the cleansing, all the detoxing, and it takes time.
It does take
like
time,
especially how you said it was exactly spot on. You have to give the body the freedom to heal itself, because that's the only way it's going to work, right? Like it's such an intelligent system.
Oh, it's
if
incredible.
you don't if you don't open up the lymph system, if you don't open up all these different systems that are very, very delicate, that are all just bombarded with toxins and garbage all the time, right? And especially in our culture, we love to drink. The UK is the same as Bavaria and Germany or Croatia. We love wine here. Like it's just just on a daily basis, just one glass, it's fine. Like for lunch, let's have a couple of pints. Let's meet at the pub, right? It's just normal, and it does have an effect on the system, and it will show. It will show eventually, especially combined with stress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
totally. Exactly.
So did you also do homeopathy and all that kind of stuff, or?
Yeah. There was a homeopath as well that I engaged, and there was homeopathy, all kinds of different treatment, nutrition, different types of therapies. But I think what happened, because I was doing all of that work and inputting all the nutrition, inputting all, revitalizing the body. When I then eventually started the cleanse process, my body just went, okay, dump. And it was remarkable. I still had to do 14 liver cleanses until I got to the point where it was a clean flush. And they normally say if you're really ill, it's between 12, 13, 14. And, the quantity of dross that came out of my body was shocking.
Yeah.
Some of the things had eyes looking back at me.
Yeah, that's
terrible things.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't think about it, right? Like especially tap water in the UK, just like in Germany, and in most cases, it's just horrible. What's in there, especially I spent some time in London as well. I think there's more cocaine in the tap water than in like it's pretty much
we make sure that we have a process we put our water through, and it goes through a 4-stage process before we drink it. I've done that for years.
It's important. But that's where one can start, because people obviously they come to me and they ask me, where can I start? I'm like, why don't you start with that? It's just a simple change, and obviously take care of what you put in there and what you consume on a daily basis. But it's a long process, and it has to be done with care and with thought. And so you do you meditate as well? Like what's your daily practice these days?
So I probably don't meditate like a classical meditation, but I do kind of mindful things, mindfulness. And I do, when I train physically, I couldn't train for 6 years. So I couldn't train in the gym. Literally, if I got on the treadmill for 10 minutes, boff, done. 2 days, couldn't function. And so it put me off training at the gym, which you could understand. And I used to train a lot in the gym. So I'm now back in the gym training, loving it. And so one of the things I do is I do lots of positive affirmations when I'm training, because my mind's focusing on the training, the positive affirmations, and it's almost like it filters through, and it does have an impact.
Yeah, it flows.
It does, yeah. And I find that, it helps me train, it helps me focus. I do other things like I love the sauna. So for me, sauna is a time where I can just chill out, relax. I can contemplate, and I'll just let thoughts come up. And so I'm not a mindfulness expert, okay, but what I quite like to do is just to see what pops up and just acknowledge it and go, oh, okay. And if it's something that I want to come back to, if I'm driving the car or if I'm at my office desk, I'll just write it down. So I have a little book here that I can just write things that pop in. And what I find is that if I note it stops this overbearing nagging, and I'm clear to be able to think, because a lot of my work is strategy work, and I'm a strategist, and so you actually have to be able to think with that, but you also have to put into your subconscious some of the strategic processes that you're thinking about, and so you don't want all this other clutter going on. I do have a type of spiritual life. I wouldn't say I'm a spiritual guru. I would say my wife is a spiritual guru. She's absolutely amazing. And I sort of hold on her coattails as regards to that. She's absolutely amazing. But I do have my own sort of set of beliefs and spiritual awareness and consciousness. I like to call it like a higher consciousness of awareness. And anyway, yeah. So
yeah, but it's good. I mean, that's all it is, right? Like, just be mindful for a bit and let those thoughts pop up, disregard them, journal. I also think that those are the basics, right? Like, it doesn't have to be hours. It doesn't have to be hours,
No, it doesn't.
Just a little bit, like 10 minutes here, 5 minutes here. It's already, doing so much, especially if you journal at night.
Yeah.
Just dump whatever is in your mind and let the rest work itself through. Yeah, super interesting.
And just on the point of, what do I do for helping sort of, beliefs and mind and attitude? I have a life and business coach, do regular sessions with my life and business coach. I also have a core transformation coach, do core transformation work regularly every month. And so that's like an investment into me. We'll deal with business stuff, we'll deal with life stuff. And I found those very rewarding because, even if I'm dealing with the business matter and it's a complicated matter, sometimes you can do all the thinking yourself, but you're not asking the right question because you're in it. And someone sat opposite you who cares about you and wants the best for you asks you that difficult question. And that difficult question can open up a whole host of realities. And what I find is I want to be dealing with reality. Okay. I don't want to be dealing with unrealities because unrealities cause pain, strife, and loss. Reality can be a little bit stark and it can be a little bit, but if we deal with reality, of which the system deals with a lot of unrealities, that's why we need to not understand it, but comprehend it, know what it is. So then they become a reality in that context. And dealing with realities, there's a lot of safety in that, and a lot of security in that. And you can plan with that. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's perspective, right? And I think we talked about this in the beginning. It's what I try to incorporate more and more is the things that I think I'm really certain about, that I want to question those. Why am I really certain about this?
Yeah, that's
exactly
a good question.
Right? Like exactly what you said before. That indoctrination about certain topics and systems and thoughts that happened in our very early years, right? Like it did its trick on so many levels, right? And it just it manifested in all these different realities, like you just said. And it's so true. Like, just put yourself in a different spot, give yourself that bird's eye view at times, talk to people. And I always say every coach that doesn't have a coach is a red flag, kind of, right? It is a problem, if you're not
you've got to practice what you preach. You really do. I believe anyway. It's one of my mantras. If I'm going to say something, I have to have experience in it. Otherwise, it's theory, and I need to let people know it's just theory.
Yeah,
because theory actually in reality is only theory, and there's only a certain level of influence that theory can have. But experience and reality and truth is a whole other level.
Yeah. How do you choose people that you work with? Is it a lot of gut feeling, and how do you go for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, the people I work with, I do employ people. And, obviously with the Money Fits Expert, we have a team, and with my other businesses, we have teams. I look for character traits first. And those character traits really are, the fundamental ones are obviously honesty and truthfulness. You want people who are going to be honest in their intentions, and you want people who are truthful in dealing with facts and reality. and certain character traits of integrity, resourcefulness, compassion. So those types of qualities of characters are what I look for. If they're trained in a particular area, then that's great, because then there's a whole level of experience that they can sit in with regards to their responsibilities that we don't need to train. So that's great. So I do look for people that have those type of classical qualifications as well. But the first and foremost is, do they have good character? You don't want to be dealing with someone that's dishonest. Life's too short to be faffing around with lies and having to navigate lies. It's just a waste of time. It's such a low level consciousness of living. Don't need to go there. So character and professional qualifications. I do want people that are switched on. So I like people that are professional. I like to work with people that if they say they'll do it, they'll do it. And I need to be able to rely on that word. So if someone says, yes, I'll do that, then I need to know it's done.
Yeah.
And my team in Money Fitness Expert and my team in the other businesses I am so blessed. My team are amazing. They're just, I really have just the most wonderful team. It's great people, and the team's growing. And we seem to attract fantastic, integrous, professional people. And I enjoy working with them. And that's another thing. You need to be able to enjoy working with people, because you spend quite a bit of time working. And if you enjoy working with them, it becomes a joy. It's not then a drudgery. And
So would you say that you speaking your truth, on the internet and on socials kind of attracts these kinds of people? Because I assume, your social channels kind of act as a pull more than you having to look for certain things. You probably just do a post, okay, we're looking for someone, and you already have stuff flying in.
Well, it's funny, the way that up until now, the way that I've actually found people is very interesting coincidences and happenings and meetings. I'll suddenly have this moment where I go, right, I need to have someone to sit in this role, to look after this, to be responsible for that, to then work with me on this. And then maybe a week later, I'll go, oh, I think I might need to, I'll phone them. And so I phone them. And then that day, they will have received a phone call. And one instance was, one of my team members, the day I phoned her, she had just received her termination notice, literally an hour before I phoned her. And so I said, oh, you might be interested in what I'm going to share with you. I'm actually looking for someone to do this. Oh, yes. And so literally within about 3 or 4 days, signed, sealed, done, And I've had that happen time and time again. And it's just this beautiful cohesion where at the moment, I haven't had to go and ask out in, the wider field. That may happen. But at the moment, it's just been this really lovely, organic, coincidence, if you can call it that.
Yeah. When you start trusting in the process, which, I just learned a couple of years ago, and I'm getting good at it now. But before I was always struggling a bit, and I would always go back to my old ways and stuff. But now I'm getting pretty good at it, and I just trust the process. And it's every single time, when shit hits a fan, afterwards I know why it happened, right? It's right. Always for me, and it happens for us, for anyone else out there too. That's just, especially when it gets tough, people don't realize that, but that there's always, later on you will know why. And
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for sure.
Time has a habit of telling all eventually.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's go back to the money game pitfalls that you like to talk about, because we touched upon a couple of them, and maybe also if you want to go into more practical stuff, like if someone had, let's say, 50K, 500K, 5 million, how would you go about let's say advising them on what to do with that money?
Well, it's an interesting that's such an interesting topic, and it's my passion. So I would like to find out, first of all, where that 50K come from, or that 500,000 come from, because if that was a windfall, if it was an inheritance, then I'd like to delve down into what's their management structure like, and have they actually had a surplus in their money management for the last 6 months, minimum last 6 months. Because, and I'll go a little bit around the houses to get back to your point, and there's a reason why.
Sure.
People think that, they have a right to invest money and make money. Well, not if you don't know how to manage your money. And we at Money Fitness Expert, and certainly I would say, and it's a bit of a controversial belief, I would say that you don't have a right to invest your money before you know how to manage it. Because I've known of people earning a lot of money, and yet they don't have a surplus. So where are they going to get their money to invest? You've heard about people winning lotteries and winning pool, all kinds of different things. And literally and this is one of my bugbears, there's adverts on TV and adverts on different game shows. Oh, if you won 100,000, oh, if you won 50,000, what would you do with it? What do people say? Oh, I'd buy a house. Oh, I'd go on holiday. So instantly, if that's what an individual's response is, they have a very, very low level of financial intelligence.
Yeah.
Very low. Because what they should be doing is, oh, I'm just going to get £50,000. That'll be tax-free, because they don't, governments tend to not tax winnings on those types of things. So that's the most valuable it'll ever be. So what am I going to do to buy a recurring asset? So an asset that creates a recurring revenue stream that then I buy the liabilities. People don't understand the difference between liabilities and assets. Robert Kiyosaki is one of the great proponents at demystifying what a liability is. And the way he describes it, I absolutely subscribe to. It is something that takes money out of your pocket. So therefore, an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. How simple is that? And if people understand that, they can then start to create their own infrastructure. So most people don't know what their own financial infrastructure is. If you haven't got a financial infrastructure, you can't create your own value circle. They don't even know what a value circle is. What's a value circle? It's where you extract the value out of the money in your infrastructure. What does that mean? I mean, these are basic fundamentals I teach people in the Money Fitness community. And then how do you budget? Why do you budget? People look at budget as being a really dirty word and a boring word. It's not when you understand it's the lifeblood of your financial journey. When you get the budgeting right, it's just a little tweaking process. It's a tweak. You don't have to rebudget every month. You tweak. And then you start tweaking. You can see then, and you can look at your tweak as to how it's going to impact you 10 years down the line. Now that becomes exciting because you can see the growth. You've got to be able to see what you're going to create, because if you can't see it, you'll never have it. So I know it's a bit of a long way to get round to, well, what would I tell them? Well, first of all, I'd say to them, learn how to manage your money. Get yourself a good budgeting structure. Get yourself a really good financial infrastructure in place. What's that? Well, we need to teach you that. If you haven't got your financial infrastructure in place, you won't be able to create your value circle. Your value circle serves you, not the banks. You need your money to serve you more than anybody else in the system, because it's not a cooperative system. So, and then yes, once you've got all your budgeting in place, you've got your management structures in place, your financial, infrastructure in place, you understand credit scores and how that works, you understand how money works, what money is, you've got your beliefs correct, then I think one should start looking at, investment processes, investment plans, investment structures. But until someone's gone through that process, it's just like someone winning a lottery. And a lottery means, well, it's... And literally, if someone invests money with that level of lack of financial literacy or intelligence, they're going to make mistakes. They're going to give it to somebody else. It's going to cost too much money. They're not going to get the return they need. They probably don't even know what return they need for their lifestyle. They've probably not even gone through the process of understanding what their lifestyle costs are. Anyway. Yeah. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think risk tolerance is also a big one, right? Like,
absolutely.
People, they think they have a big risk tolerance, and then, when shit hits the fan, it's like, oh my God, I'm panicking, quickly, I want to get out of it. Well, can you?
Right? Can you? Exactly. And also it risk can be, the whole risk factor can be dependent upon your age as well, and also what you're trying to achieve. And there's so many different moving factors that one has to take into account. It's not just a case of, I just put my money there. Why are you putting it there? What do you want to achieve from it? What's your return you need? How much do you need? How do you know you need that? There's so many foundational, fundamental pre-planning before you invest. Because if you don't know why you're investing, well, you don't know whether you've ever succeeded, do you?
Yeah, it's so important to see where you're going. Just like you
Yeah,
said,
the
if you
why.
don't, if you don't know where you're going, then you're never
It's
gonna
it's
get
the
there.
first thing. Why are you doing anything is really important. Really, really important.
And so because you said you have a community, of course, but like, do you also do one-on-ones, or is it mainly like, like a group process, or what does it look like?
I used to do one-on-ones, and then I realized that I needed to try to scale the knowledge and to scale the education to help more people. And I had some very good successful results with one-on-ones, and hence, well, actually one of my clients, they said, "Oh, you should really think about helping more people, because this is just amazing." I mean, so for example, one of my little sessions with that client, we managed to save them, I think it was £6,500 in interest interest payments, and that was probably about a half an hour time that we spent together, and I created this funds flow and process, and it saved them that amount of money. And that's part of financial education and being able to be literate in the money game. Is there are processes that you can use, and funds flow processes that actually can be advantageous for you, and they're perfectly legal. And inside that system, we must be legal, because you don't want to take the tax authorities on, because they have got a huge suite of sledgehammers to use, and they will use them. So let's not even go there. It's much, much better to be wise and a finesse and a strategy and a process. So yeah, now I've started the Money Fitness community, and this is where we have a bi-weekly call. We're just starting, and it's an hour Zoom session where I will go into the money game, and we'll start to then go on this financial journey. And we've got what I call our MFC expert mentors. So we'll have an accountant, we'll have a financial advisor, we'll have some business experts who are really successful businessmen. We've got life coaches, business coaches, change coaches, and they'll be interviewed by me on how their expertise needs to be implemented in a strategy of managing money, investing money to make money, so that you can then have passive income. And all of this is relevant. How you manage your money comes from your belief structure. So we have to work on beliefs, which is the why. We need to know why we're doing it, which is why someone's got $500,000. Why are you investing it? What's the reason? We need to know the why, and it needs to be defined, because then when you define it, you know when you've achieved it. And when you've achieved it, you don't want to go chasing after bigger carrots. You want to do what you've planned to do. And it's not all about getting more and more and more and more and more money. It's about, what do I need to facilitate so I can do what I'm really here to do in my life? That's the real end game, not about the accumulation of more at the cost of the many. Anyway, I hope that makes some sort of sense.
No, it totally makes sense.
Brilliant.
Yeah, the idea of always wanting more, right? Like, it's so ingrained, especially within us men, right? Like, we watch like all these Wall Street movies, and I mean, I was on that path too. I was supposed to go into finance, and you hear investment banking when you're like 16, 17 years old and just want to go into that realm. And I was lucky because I always had older friends, so I would hang out with their bosses, and they would go to the pub on a Friday night, and I would hang out with them, and they're like, "Man, Max, like, you really want to go down that route?" Like, I see my wife for an hour on a Sunday. She's at Merrill Lynch. I'm like at this other firm, and like, we don't have a life, right? And we're just the fucking, addicted, like, uppers and downers all day. And like, you really want this? So I'm like, maybe maybe it's not that interesting as I thought, right? Like, it's not all glamour and that life, that you see in the movies.
There's a price to pay.
Well, yeah, of course, yeah. But you mentioned the accountant, right? Like, that's also super interesting to me, because like, people don't think about that. Like, they're educated by the system, so why would you expect them to give you any, like, knowledge that is kind of working against the system? Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. You see, it has to be some, like, right? It's like these creative people that are, seekers, right? That kind of acquire additional knowledge. They want, they know, okay, offshore is that is possible. You can work with different entities. You can, you have different, holding structures, all that kind of stuff. But that's already in the creative sphere. But those, 80-90% that are out there, they're never going to give you that advice. It's not possible.
No, and for some people, it might not be relevant depending on, the
Mm,
amount of return they want to create and the reason why they're doing what they're doing with their money.
yeah,
Which is why it's more of a bespoke approach. You can apply the principles. The principles are pretty much the same, but how you apply the principles and when you apply those principles will differ depending on the why. Why are you doing this? Why are you wanting to manage your money? Why are you wanting to create a recurring revenue stream? Why are you wanting to invest? Why are you wanting to set up structures? Infrastructure, financial infrastructure is what you're talking about, the legal entities, etc. So it's 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 not a one size fits all with regards to the actual outworking of a process. Now, the principles are all the same and they're fundamental. The rules of the money game are fundamental. And as regards with accounting and an accountant, there are good accountants, and they're worth their weight in gold when you find one. And it's how you utilize your relationship. What type of questions do you ask, and when do you ask those questions? And it's also understanding who they work for and
yeah,
their allegiance continuum. Most people don't understand that. This is the kind of thing we talk about and share on the Money Fitness community because people need to know this stuff. What's the reality? What is their allegiance continuum? I.e., who do they serve first? Is it their
yeah.
client? Well, I would argue it's not. But anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big problem. I mean, I come from a family with a lot of people in medicine and healers, and it's the same thing there, right? Like it's a lot of education from the system, and I was lucky because let's say my father, he was always twofold. He would go the natural way, but he would also
Right.
prescribe like an ibuprofen, right? Like just to
Right.
keep it simple. I mean,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
UK, it's salty butter and toast and a paracetamol, right? Right. Like, oh, you strained your ankle. Okay, take this, right? Like, it's always the same. It was funny, but you know, it was clear to me at some point that it's difficult to have these conversations with these people if they're not seekers, right? Like if they always want to operate in that safe realm. It's the same with lawyers, right? Like law, medicine, accounting, like all that kind of stuff. It's all system based, and they get in Germany especially, you don't really have like a let's say like a medical system that's completely secluded from the system because it gets paid through the system, right? And they make sure it's that the doctors are being paid through the system, and there's insurance companies and they work together with the system, right? It's all that big
It's a very clever
network,
matrix.
super clever, right? And if you want to work around it as a doctor, you get into problems, right? Like we've seen
Mm-hmm.
it a couple years ago now, right? When we had that interesting phase where it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, am I going to
For sure.
support this, because there's something shady going on or not, right? Am I going to support this, yes or no? But if you were speaking about it publicly that you weren't supporting it, you got into big problems, right?
Well, actually, three-stage process: discredit, banish, silence. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And on that point, I do have a little bit of sympathy and understanding. Well, I'm probably more empathy, if I'm honest, with regards to the people who are in those positions that don't speak up,
Mm,
because I remember when I was starting to challenge the fundamentals and the foundations of, the money game, the system, and I went into my office when I was a police officer, and I'd made a complaint, and it was interesting because I'd probably been in my training phase. I call it my training phase for about a year to a year and a half then, and I went into this office, and there was probably about 30 officers in there, and I knew to say hi to probably about 27 or 28 of them. I didn't know the other two or three, and I'd probably worked with about 8 or 9 of them, something like that. And I sat there and I said hello to a few of them, and they ignored me.
mm.
And for half an hour, I sat in the same room, looked at them. They wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't communicate. And it was quite a shocking experience for me. However, I look back on it and I understand, and I have more empathy now because I had a greater purpose in why I was doing what I was doing. And so I was prepared to go down the line of literally, what I call sowing all my earthly created value. I wasn't losing because I chose to do it.
Mm.
I chose to. It's different if you choose to do something than if it's it was ripped from. But I chose that process for a higher order, a higher consciousness. And if they don't have that level of understanding and consciousness at that point, then they're going to choose the path of least resistance, which is understandable. Because if they'd have decided to talk to me, side with me, well, guess what? The system would have treated them exactly the way it treated me.
Yeah.
And they may, because they are not, in inverted commas, called, or they don't have this urgency or this yearning or this passion, because they don't have that, it could cause them far more harm than it did me. And it caused me a lot of harm, financial harm, reputational harm, physical harm, mental harm. But if they hadn't got that inner, deep, consciousness, it could have finished them off. So I understand that people in those positions, there is a real fear, and I know there are people that say, "Oh, false evidence being real, fear is not real; it's just a construct." You know what? I've actually felt the teeth of fear, and fear has teeth, and when it sinks its teeth into you, it really hurts. So there are some fears that are real, because the consequences of the fear I have felt in the system. And I know that people don't like to hear that, but there are some things that, they're real consequences, and they're not nice to go through. And so I have an empathy towards the people that don't, stand up, and, it's rather than pointing the finger and saying, "Oh, you're a weak, there's a reason, there are reasons." And
Yeah, of course.
unless someone has a higher level of consciousness awareness, it might not be their fight.
Yeah.
It was certainly mine, but it might not be theirs. Theirs might be in a completely different arena at a different time for a different purpose, but with the overarching goal of truth and truth seeking.
Yeah. Yeah. But why do these, I totally get that. And I also agree. But a lot of times, exactly these people, they like to point fingers, right?
Sorry, say that again.
They like to point fingers, right? Exactly.
Right,
These
okay.
people, like, why don't like I'm fine. Like, if you don't want to mess with that kind of stuff, if you want to feel safe, like, stay there, right? Like, it's totally fine. But why do you, attack these people that are, trying something new? Why do you attack, people that, looking for something else, that are the seekers, that try to find the true truth, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times those in the corner are the ones, like, especially doing stuff from the background, like doing all these this nasty kind of stuff, like building cases and all that kind of stuff. Because I've been there, right? Like, it was, it was my kind of journey. Like, I've been attacked on so many levels, right? Like, I was bullied, like, when I was younger, and like I was never part of the big group, and okay, so I'm fine with being that person now, right? But like, at the time, it was fucking tough.
Yeah,
especially when you're young, like, you're not even grown, right? Like, I was kind of fairly small until my 18th year of age, and I got way stronger later on. I only did started martial arts in my 20s, and it was a tough youth. But I'm totally fine with that. Like, but do not attack the one that tries to go for something else, right? Like, do not try to keep these people small, because those are the people that kind of bring us forward, right? Like, that's what we need in our society, I would say.
It's true, and that's the whole cancel culture type attitude, isn't it? And it may be a bit of a powder keg, but certainly I there were people that attacked me through the process I went through, and it was a good 12, 14-year process. And in the end, I realized that for me, my perception of them was that they were under a greater level of fear than I was, and that fear was controlling their reasoning, controlling their conduct and actions, reactions. And, in the end, I had a little bit of compassion for them, because I realized that they were so embroiled and under fear that they couldn't do anything else apart from what their belief structure was, which was fear-based. And they actually needed to encounter a higher consciousness of who they are, because actually operating like that, pointing the finger, vilifying people who are truth seekers and trying to do good for the general population, they're actually only harming themselves as well in the future, because it's harder for the truth seeker to enlighten people. It makes it a harder job. So therefore, they're actually putting another nail in their legal coffin just by their very action.
Yeah. And
when they start to wake up and realize that, and they start to get a higher level consciousness and realize, oh my goodness me, the whole system's punitive, it's punishment based. If I get a bit off piste, but our highest form of consciousness is love.
Hmm.
And if we had a love-based system, just what would that be? People used to shoot me down for that because I never found love in any of the contracts, and people laughed at me. They laughed at me. Why on earth, And I'd say, I'd stop. Love's not in the contract. Why? Oh, because it would never happen. Why? And eventually you get down to the point of, oh, because if love was in the contract and not only influential, but a governing source of authority, much of what we have and are subject to would cease any level of authority, and therefore it couldn't be executed. And so anyway, it's another whole topic, but I do have a little bit of empathy for people who do point the finger, because I've seen them, and and they make life difficult for us, right? But they've probably got quite a difficult internal posture, and some might even think that they're having a great time, but when you look back and you start to really assess and you use love as the benchmark of your achievements, I say no more.
Yeah. I think truth is actually above love for me.
You can't have truth without love.
Yeah, but if you always speak your truth, love is part of that, right? Because you love yourself.
Yeah.
But anyways, but like that, those are the reasons why LSD and mushrooms and stuff like that are illegal. I don't know. Have you messed with any of the plant medicines of this world, or is
not that kind? No, okay. I've had my own sort of spiritual experiences, which are interesting and quite startling, but they've not been induced by any sort of potion lotion or anything like that. It's just something I've experienced and thought, whoa, that was interesting.
Yeah. Maybe you didn't need it, and it's totally fine. It's not for everyone. Like I speak about that a lot in this podcast because it's kind of becoming mainstream, especially in the States. To do an ayahuasca session in South America or Central America, and a lot of people don't do the work prior to that, right? And then they think, okay, I have all these problems, and I just go to the jungle, and then I'm going to come out of this and going to be a different person, and they don't integrate.
So it's this whole idea of a quick fix again.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a big problem. But again, as you see, it's always the same. People just want to have the quick fix. They want to fix the symptom. They don't want to go to the root. And then that's kind of where it goes now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to go back to your work a bit, because I'm totally interested in that. Maybe we can talk about inflation a bit if you have some time left.
Yeah, I've got,
because I think inflation is an interesting one. Yeah, do you have 10 more minutes?
I probably only have 5 because I've got another
cool. Yeah, let's do 5.
Appointment at 4, so I need to prepare for that. So you have to cut this out. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. We'll just keep it in. So let's talk about inflation, because it's right now it's kind of people see that it's real. Like they always think it's 4 or 5%. But it's always been way more than that, and it's kind of in the background, and now they can see it because their goods are getting more expensive, the services are getting more expensive. Now they start thinking about it. They still keep the cash under their pillow, but it's still a topic that's not talked about enough, I would say.
It is. Inflation. I actually put a small little post up on Instagram recently on Money Fitness Expert, and it was I think it was entitled what is the screwdriver in a government's monetary toolbox? And then we say, eventually it's inflation, and it's actually a stealth tax, and we've kind of changed the word stealth into steal with a little apostrophe th. So stealth, it's a stealth tax. Why is it a stealth tax? Well, because it steals from us every single day, and it steals more and more and more because it's cumulative. And the other, I'm not an economist, okay, but I do know a little bit. And of course, I feel the effects of it, as we all do, and they're negative unless you've got tons of assets. It's really positive if you've got a lot of assets, right? And it's really good if you've got a fixed debt. And there's reasons why, and we can go into that. But one of the utter myth that really upsets me. And I just wish that people would actually tell more truth. Okay, so inflation this year, it's gone down from 4% to 2%. Has inflation gone down? No, the rate of inflation is slowing. So it's not gone down. If it went down, it would have to go to negative, because last year was 4% on, 2% the year on the cumulative effect. So in order for inflation to go down, it would have to reduce to a negative. So, and people, they just lap this crap up. Yeah. It's not gone down if it's gone from 4 to 2 or 5 to 1. It just means the rate of inflation has slowed, because you've got all the cumulative years of inflation, of the devaluing of the currency. It's such a stealth tax, and it's a huge value steal. It steals our value. Most people have to work for the money that is printed. Literally, well, it's not printed anymore. It's just typed into an account. Which is why we teach. Money Fitness Expert, do not hold all your value that you have really worked hard to create. Don't hold it in a form of so-called store of value that can just be printed or typed into oblivion. Yeah. It's one of the worst places to store your money, or the value, I should say, you've created, in a bank account.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah, we did. There's plenty of more topics that we could go down to. I don't know. Maybe
we could do a part 2 sometime, can't we?
Yeah, for sure. But the Fed, private institution, and they're just lending.
What? Really?
Yeah. It's like nobody knows this, and they're just paying. Governments lend or borrow from them, right? Like it's
a private institution has owners.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But yeah, that's totally for a second conversation. But let's say if you could choose one percentage of tax, personal income, let's say, that you would say that's fine, where you could say, okay, this would work for me, so it's not theft. What would it be?
What would the
percentage of tax be where you could say, okay, I'm fine with that percentage, right? I would gladly pay this every year, and then there's no need for me to, go offshore or be a perpetual traveler or that kind of stuff.
Well, if the governing entity does not commit to be honest and truthful with their dealings, and they don't operate with a reciprocity towards their citizens, then for me,
0.
I can't trust them, and it's 0.
Yeah, exactly.
If
I agree.
That governing entity commits to being honest and truthful and treat its citizens with reciprocity, then I could trust them with a tax that money is going to actually serve the general population, and I wouldn't have an issue with the tax then, because you could trust the entity, you could trust the people who are representing the entity. But unfortunately, I don't see that at the moment. I'd love to see it, but I don't see it at the moment. So,
what about all the streets that need to be built? Come on. No, it's all good. No, I agree. I totally agree. But I think let's hope these conversations get out there and people start thinking, and we're already on a good path. But thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It was excellent.
Good.
And
thank you.
Hope I'll see you soon.
Absolutely.